On the afternoon of Friday, June 27th, a massive gathering of Iranians and Iranian resistance supporters from 69 countries across the globe gathered in the Villepinte Hall near Paris. Over 600 political dignitaries, MPs, and jurists from around the world took part in this rally. Some of these dignitaries, along with representatives of Iranian associations, including youths, on behalf of over 300 associations and societies, delivered speeches in this gathering and called for protection of Liberty residents and the Iraqi government to respect their human rights. Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, President-elect of the Iranian Resistance, delivered a speech on recent developments in Iran and Iraq, and while expressing concerns regarding plots by the Mullah's regime and Maliki against Camp Liberty residents, underscored the responsibilities of the U.S. and UN Secretary General before the protection, safety, and security of these refugees. She called on the U.S. to at least temporarily transfer Liberty residents to the U.S. or a European country at the residents' own expense, guarantee Liberty's security, prevent the Iraqi government from any type of attack and aggression against Liberty residents, and impel Baghdad to end the inhumane siege imposed against the residents. Mr. Ed Melkert, former UN Special Representative of the Secretary General in Iraq until 2011, was amongst the speakers who expressed his regret over the current repression and pressures imposed on Liberty residents, going on to call on the international community to support and protect Liberty residents. From the U.S., Senator Menendez, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, Senator Levin, Chairman of the Senate Armed Forces Committee, Ed Royce, Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Senator McCain, Ranking Member of the Senate Armed Forces Committee, sent video messages to the gathering emphasizing on protection for liberty. These messages contained important issues to be mentioned in this report. From Albania, which has to this day accepted more than 200 Liberty residents, a large friendship delegation including former Prime Minister Sali Berisha and Panduli Maiko took part, delivering messages of support and friendship for Liberty residents. Other speakers at this event, directed by Linda Chavez, former White House Director for Public Liaison, and Francis Townsend, former Homeland Security and Terrorism Advisor to the United States President, were Rudy Giuliani, former New York City Mayor and U.S. presidential candidate, Joseph Lieberman, former Senator, Newt Gingrich, former House of Representatives Speaker and U.S. presidential candidate, a delegation from the U.S. Congress, Congressman Ted Poe, Danny Davis, and Loretta Sanchez, General Hugh Shelton, Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General George Casey, former U.S. Army Chief of Staff, Louis Freeh, former Director of FBI, Michael Mukasey, former U.S. Attorney General, Sid Ahmed Khozali, former Algerian Prime Minister, Mohammed Al-Arabi, former Egyptian Foreign Minister, Kim Campbell, former Canadian Prime Minister, José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, former Spanish Prime Minister, Alejo Vidal Quadras, European Parliament Vice President, Struan Stevenson, Member of the European Parliament, Lord Carlisle, prominent member of the House of Lords on behalf of a high-level delegation from both British Houses, Michel Alliot-Marie, French Minister of Defense, Minister of Justice, and Minister of Home Affairs, Bernard Kouchner, former French Minister of Foreign Affairs, Rama Yade, former advisor to the French Foreign Minister on Human Rights, Giulia Maria Terzi, former Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ardalan Ben-Oni, Romanian Senator.
This is Senator Carl Levin. Thank you for the opportunity to extend my best wishes to the Iranian diaspora in convention in France. These are days of extraordinary challenge for people across the Middle East. Violence, civil war, and repression are a threat to the security and liberty of millions. Ethnic, religious, and political minorities are especially vulnerable. It is essential that the United States play an active role in promoting security and freedom in the region. And that is especially true with regard to Iran. There is no question but that repression, violence, and human rights violations continue in Iran, especially against minorities and women. I also join in your calls on Iraq to secure the safety of the residents of Camp Liberty, to prevent further harm from those who are doing the harm to those who still live there, and to hold accountable those responsible for violence against the camp's residents. While a small portion of the Camp Liberty residents have been resettled safely outside of Iraq, it remains imperative that the international community, including the United States, provide a safe home for all the camp residents. We look forward to the day when free, democratic governments are in power in the Middle East, governments that uphold universal values of human rights and liberty. I thank you for your commitment to work toward that goal in Iran.
Bonjour, salam, durud. Hello and greetings to all of you gathered today in Paris. This year we join in solidarity in Paris in remembrance of the deadly rocket attacks on Camp Liberty, and to demand that the people in Camp Liberty be able to live without fear and uncertainty. The day is coming, my friends, when the people in this camp are no longer the targets of terrorist acts, no longer the victims of violence, no longer left unprotected. I have called on the government of Iraq and the United States government again and again to do more to ensure the safety and security of the people at Camp Liberty. And I am heartened that Iraqi leaders and administration officials now seem to understand how critical the safety and security of Camp Liberty residents are to me and many of my colleagues in the United States Senate. I call on Iraqi officials to do everything in their power to prevent further attacks. I told Prime Minister Maliki in person last year that his commitment to the safety and security of the MEK members at Camp Liberty is a critical factor in my future support for any assistance to Iraq. I want to acknowledge the important role played by the MEK leadership in exposing the duplicity of the regime in Tehran. We all know who ultimately holds power in Iran and who makes decisions. Iran's leadership has deliberately armed and trained Iraqi Shia militias to bleed U.S. forces in Iraq. It is a state sponsor of terrorism, and this will not change regardless of what happens at the negotiating table in Vienna or what happens in Iraq. The fact is, Iran is interested in working with us only to the extent that it protects its interests in pursuing its regional hegemonic goals. The fact is, Iran is a destabilizing influence throughout the region and continues to actively cultivate a network of terrorists and violent proxies across the Middle East. I've made clear to the U.S. administration officials that the safety and security of the MEK members at Camp Liberty must continue to be a priority. For that, we stand in solidarity together. My thoughts and prayers are with you.
Hello, I am Ed Royce, Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the United States House of Representatives in the Congress. The issue that I wanted to talk to you about was the Iranian regime and how the Iranian regime continues to involve itself in very serious human rights abuses, even as we here today discuss a situation that we had hoped would be better. But here Iran is on pace to surpass the number of executions without due process from last year. And this is under President Rouhani. But I think we should remember that this is a man who called on the regime's besieged militia to crush mercilessly and monumentally the student protesters. He is the man who appointed as his Minister of Justice a person responsible for the summary execution of so many people in the late 1980s without trial or due process. Rouhani is a creature of the regime. pure and simple. And that is why we should be speaking out against these abuses. Unfortunately, I fear that the Obama administration's engagement with Iran has signaled to them that we are focused on its nuclear program alone, no matter how many innocent men or women are being beaten or tortured or raped or killed. If Iran and the P5+1 come to an agreement next month that allows the regime to retain much of its critical nuclear infrastructure in place, the Obama administration will essentially be trusting the regime that holds the noose in one hand to hold the keys to a nuclear bomb in the other. And in doing so, they will again fail to grasp the concept that promoting human rights, promoting democracy in Iran, and improving our national security, in fact, go hand in hand. Thank you.
I'm honored to have been invited to the 2014 International Convention for Democracy, and I send my deep regrets that I'm unable to attend. This is an important time to be discussing the prospects for democracy and the protection of fundamental human rights in Iran. We can't allow the negotiations over a nuclear agreement overshadow the human rights situation in Iran that grows worse and worse each day. The people of Iran continue to face severe and systematic abuses of their civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. And as the Iranian regime continues to suppress the rights of its citizens, it fosters instability throughout the region and sponsors terrorism across the globe. More must be done to comprehensively address the challenges posed by the Iranian regime and counter the threat their dangerous actions pose. It's vitally important that the United States do more to assist the residents of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty. The United States government gave a promise of protection to the residents of Camp Ashraf in return for their decision to lay down their arms. We must recognize that the United States has a responsibility to fulfill this guarantee and ensure that our failed promise does not become a stain on the reputation of the United States of America. Thank you all for being here and for your dedication to a just cause. I encourage all of you to continue your fight for democracy and human rights, not only in Iran, but across the globe. I promise I will never give up till everyone in Camp Ashraf and Liberty are free to go wherever they want. Hopefully, many to the United States of America.